Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Emily Gauze. I'm a project manager with the Tenants First team. I just want to welcome you to our tenant information session on the staff report called Implementing Tenants First, Creating a Seniors Housing Corporation. So thank you so much for taking the time to attend this session, this virtual session with us this afternoon. We hope everyone is staying safe and healthy in this very strange pandemic time. I'm just going to go over our agenda for today. So we're going to start with a land acknowledgement and then a welcome, and then we'll provide an overview of this WebEx platform that we're using to host this virtual session. This is still a little bit new for all of us, so hopefully we'll be able to give you all the information you need to fully participate. We'll then have a presentation going over the content of the report, and then at 2:30 or after that presentation, we'll open it up to questions, and then we'll look to wrap up around 3 o'clock. So we'll start with our land acknowledgement. The City of Toronto acknowledges that we are on the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. The city also acknowledges that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 signed with the Mississaugas of the Credit and the Williams Treaties signed with multiple Mississauga and Chippewa bands. So welcome again, and thank you again for taking the time to attend. The purpose of this information session is to share information with you and to inform you as tenants about what is contained in the Implementing Tenants First staff report regarding the creation of the Toronto Seniors Housing Corporation. And this staff report will be considered by Executive Committee this Thursday. There'll be an opportunity for you to ask questions related to the report, and myself and a number of panelists are here this afternoon to answer those questions. And then we'll also provide you with information on how you can have your voice heard at City Council and how you can let members of the Executive Committee know what you think about the report. So I'll now introduce our panelists for this afternoon. So with me, we have Jen St. Louis, the manager of the Tenants First team here at the City of Toronto. We also have Andrea Austin, the manager of Senior Services at Senior Services and Long-Term Care, also with the city. Grant Coffey, the program director with the integrated service model with the Seniors Housing Unit at TCHC is joining us as well. We've got Lindsay Viets, the Director of Strategic Planning and Stakeholder Relations with TCHC joining us. Cynthia Summers, the Commissioner of Housing Equity is here as well from the Office of the Commissioner of Housing Equity. And we also have Melanie Martin, a Senior Advisor with the Office of the Commissioner of Housing Equity joining us today in this call. So we'll just spend a brief minute going over the code of conduct for this session. As I mentioned, this is these virtual information sessions are still new to many of us. So we do ask that you be brief and that you limit yourself to one question or comment at a time. We ask that you use the raise hand function of this WebEx program to ask questions, and we'll give you some more information on how that works in a second. Or to make a comment, to leave that in the question and answer box. We ask that you stay on topic. So this information session is really focused on the creation of the Seniors Housing Corporation and the changes to the seniors housing portfolio that are forthcoming. If you have any individual or private matters or any types of complaints, those are really best addressed offline and not in this forum. We ask that you be a good listener and that you keep an open mind. And we ask that you be respectful. The City of Toronto is an inclusive public organization. Racist or other forms of discriminatory or hateful comments and questions will not be tolerated. For individuals who require an accessibility-related accommodation to participate in this information session, using adaptive technologies may work best over the phone. The city is still working through some of the accessibility issues related to WebEx. And panelists will be describing the content on the slides during the presentation. So if you're joining us over the phone, you'll have the same information that participants joining us through the web will have as well. If you are joining us online, to use the Q&A, the question and answer feature in WebEx, you would click the More Options button at the bottom of the video window. So you may see that as represented as 3 dots, ... and you'll select Q&A. You'll then type your question into the box on the lower right hand of your screen and click Send. Only staff will be able to see your questions, and then your questions will be directed to the relevant panelists and answered during the question and answer period after the presentation. If you are joining us over the phone, you can still participate and ask questions. You'll do so by entering *3 on your phone, and this will virtually raise your hand. Your name will then be placed in a queue based on the order of who raised their hand first. And the moderator, so in this case me, will select and individually unmute participants with their hand raised icon by announcing the first few digits of your telephone number. It will not be your full phone number to protect your privacy. When you are selected and unmuted, you will hear 2 beeps, and this means that you can then ask city staff your question. Just a couple notes on privacy. So this is a public event and it is being recorded. The recording will be posted on the city's website. So we ask that you do not share any personal information such as your last name or your address on the call to protect your privacy. If you want to discuss something specific related to your tenancy or a private matter, we ask that you contact the TCHC Client Care Center at 416-981-5500. So now I'll pass it over to Jen, who will bring us through the presentation on the report.
Thanks, Emily, and again, welcome everyone. We're pleased that you were able to make it. It's certainly not an ideal way to connect with tenants, and we recognize that, so we appreciate that you've made the effort. So I'm just going to give a quick overview of the report, and then after that, as Emily mentioned, all the panelists will be available to answer questions. So to start off, some important dates. Executive Committee meets on April 29th. And tenants and other members of the public can have their say at committee. You can register to speak by emailing the committee, which is exc@toronto.ca, or call 416-392-4666. You can also send an email or letter to the committee at the same email address, exc@toronto.ca, or by mail to the 12th floor, West Tower City Hall, 100 Queen Street West. That's in Toronto. Postal code M as in Mary, 5H2N2. And I'll be repeating this information at the end of the session as well. So if you're on the phone and you didn't catch all of that, you can certainly grab a pen in the meantime, and we'll give you that information again. As well, City Council will be considering this item on May 5th and 6th. And you can watch that live on YouTube. The city has its own YouTube channel. So if you go to youtube.com, it's /C/Toronto City Council Live /. So again, this information I'll repeat at the end of the meeting. So the background on Tenants First: since 2016, City Council has approved actions as part of Tenants First to steer TCHC towards long-term change. In 2019, City Council approved in principle the creation of a seniors housing corporation, subject to a process to look at legal issues. And just this past fall in October, Council directed staff to report back in spring 2021 with timelines for the corporation's creation and the transition of the operations of the seniors housing unit to the new corporation. And that's what this report is. The report at a high level gives authority to create what is called Toronto Seniors Housing Corporation and to begin the process to move the operation of 83 buildings, 14,000 units to the new corporation. TCHC will still be responsible to complete the capital repairs. So as you may know, TCHC has a 10-year capital plan, which is funded in part by the city, in part by TCHC, and through some funds gotten through the National Housing Strategy. So all of that work will continue. The Toronto Seniors Housing Corporation will operate the buildings using the integrated service model. The report seeks the authority to appoint a transitional lead staff person who would be an employee of the Seniors Housing Corporation and start that transitional work. There is also interim direction for the Office of the Commissioner of Housing Equity. And as well, at the same council meeting, the Board of Directors for the Toronto Seniors Housing Corporation will be approved. That's been through a different process, through nominating panel. And there are, as a reminder, 2 councillors and 7 public members on that board. 2 of the public members are tenants. And there is a goal of having at least 50% of the public members being seniors. So the report gives a phased approach to transitioning. And I think, you know, the most important, I think, for everyone to know the date is phase 3. And that's the transfer of operations to the Seniors Housing Corporation. And that will happen in mid-2022. So at that point, if you're a tenant in the Seniors Housing Unit, you will become a tenant of the Toronto Seniors Housing Corporation rather than TCHC. If you're an employee and you work in the Seniors Housing portfolio, you will have a new employer. So the people who work in the Seniors Housing Unit who choose to move to the new corporation will no longer work for TCHC. And at that point, it kind of lines up with the integrated service model being fully implemented across the seniors portfolio. Phase 1 and 2 outline the work that needs to happen to get there. So we need to do some, you know, administrative corporate work, establishing the corporation, appointing the board of directors, and then again, the integrated service model kind of alongside the creation of the corporation is being implemented across the portfolio in phases. In phase 2, the ISM continues to be implemented. And then we start to hire, you know, Senior Housing Corporation executive team, a permanent CEO, and we will be engaging and informing tenants about key dates. The recommendation for the Office of the Commissioner of Housing Equity is that during an interim period, nothing will change for tenants. There are a lot of changes happening with the transfer of operations, and you know, it is being recommended through this report that the good work that happens at the OACH continues throughout a transitional process. So this, the main reason for this is that we wanted as little disruption to tenant access to services as possible. And so services will be accessed in the same way. After that 2-year period, the new up and running Seniors Housing Corporation will still have to provide the kinds of services of the OACH, but they'll need to figure out exactly how that happens. And we are expecting, you know, consideration of anything happening at the city, as well as any innovation in working with seniors, that all of that data and information will be used in making that decision. The intention is not to, you know, get rid of the OACH or to diminish the services. It's really about honoring the good work that has happened and ensuring that while this transition period happens, nothing changes for all tenants regarding the OACH, and that moving forward, there is some thoughtful consideration of how those services will continue. I'm just going to quickly review what Emily talked about, how to ask questions, and then we'll get into our session, our Q&A session. So as we explained at the beginning, if you're online and you want to ask a question, you can click the ... or more options button at the bottom of the video window and select Q&A. If you type your question into the box and click send, staff will be able to see your questions. We will have Emily moderating the session, so she'll read the questions out and then direct them to the appropriate panelist. Your question will be directed to relevant panelists and answered after the presentation, which is now. If you're on the phone, you can enter *3 to virtually raise your hand, and your name will be placed into a queue based on the order of who raised their hand first. Emily will then select and individually unmute participants with the hand raised icon by announcing some of the digits of their telephone number. When you're selected and unmuted, you'll hear 2 beeps, and this means that everyone can hear you and you can ask your question. Once your question has been answered, if you press *3 again to lower your hand, then we'll know that, if you raise it again, you have another question. Okay, so I think I will pass it over to Emily to moderate questions. And if all of the panelists could come back on screen and be prepared to answer questions, that would be super great. Thanks.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Jen. So I don't see any questions as of yet, but if individuals have questions, please feel free to please feel free to type them into that Q&A box, or if you're joining us on the phone, over the phone, to hit *3 to raise your hand. Okay, so we have a first question coming through online, and this individual asks, why, I think their question relates to seniors' participation. So why are seniors being denied the active participation and equal voice in decision-making for the seniors ISM as youth have enjoyed in the development of the youth-driven refresh for their family buildings, or the funds and support that Tenants First makes available for the youth to engage and inspire their communities? Grant or Lindsay, would you like to maybe address that question?
So maybe I'll start. It's Grant, and maybe Lindsay, maybe you can you hear me, Emily?
Yes, we can hear you.
So thank you for the question. And so our intent is for the voice of seniors to be actively included in terms of the future of how the ISM and how the different aspects of the ISM will evolve, and how we'll have input from tenants and seniors. So one piece of that is to sort of build on some initial engagement that's happening with, for example, our Senior Tenant Advisory Committee, which was established and is a small group of tenants to represent our population in giving us input and feedback and advice with regards to the ISM. And that was established in December of 2020 as part of the ISM. And then moving forward, we will be looking to sort of refine and look at the tenant engagement system as it applies in the seniors realm, to try to help ensure that the voice of seniors and the requirements of seniors tenants are a part of that in an active way, and look to build upon areas of improvement that the seniors and our tenants believe would be things to consider. And in terms of looking at funds and that, we will also look at that area as well. We are still in the early days of implementing the ISM. So we've only implemented the first region, and we have 3 more regions to go. So there's still opportunities as we continue the implementation of the ISM to build this out. And maybe I'll sort of I'll stop there.
Okay, thanks so much, Grant. Did any other panelists have anything else they wanted to add?
Emily, can I just jump in?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I just wanted to mention that we at Senior Services and Long-Term Care got a grant through the CMHC to have access to 2 PhDs, one who's an expert in evaluation in seniors, and the other who's an expert in seniors housing. And through that grant, we were able to engage 200 tenants through the development process including 58 in-depth one-on-one interviews with diverse tenants. And as well, consultations were held with community partners, including 58 interviews with service providers to seniors. We had a workshop with 74 stakeholders from areas like primary care and home care, home and community care, housing, advocacy bodies, and that sort of thing. And then, of course, ongoing engagement is happening through the Senior Tenant Advisory Committee, as well as other forums.
Great, thanks so much, Andrea. I just want to remind participants, if they do have any questions, that they can type those into the Q&A box. And if they're joining us over the phone, that they can hit *3 to raise their virtual hand. I just want to let people know as well, we are looking to answer questions from as many participants as possible. So if you're asking us several questions, we may not get to all your questions in our session, especially if several of them are quite similar. We do have another question through the online Q&A that asks, I am reminding you OACH was a program created for seniors. Therefore, please tell me and my fellow seniors, why are we not keeping OACH? Do you really think that this is a wise decision? At the presentation of Tenants First, it was stated that TCHC created OACH, so they get to keep it. The refresh was also created by TCHC, but you are imposing it on seniors. This program was not geared for seniors, but youth and families. How does this equate? Jen, would you like to maybe start us off in responding to that comment?
I can definitely start. I mean, I don't think I can respond to the refresh, so maybe that's a Lindsay question, because the city has not imposed any engagement system onto seniors. And that will be a decision that will need to be made by the Seniors Housing Corporation as well. But I can definitely address the OACH issue. And I do think there's been a bit of a misunderstanding about what the recommendation is. So I think that the OACH as it exists is a function of TCHC. We are saying that we expect that the seniors will need to have, a similar, they'll need to provide the same level of service. But it is up to the corporation to go through a due diligence process to figure out exactly what that looks like. The intention is not for a disruption or reduction in service, but it is for thoughtful decision-making about how seniors specifically, so the OACH was created for seniors and vulnerable tenants at TCHC, and this is the opportunity to take those lessons learned and for a seniors-focused corporation to make some decisions about the best way to get that extra level of service for seniors who are at risk of being evicted or losing their subsidy. I don't know, Lindsay, if you want to talk about the refresh.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not quite sure how to address that. I think, you know, maybe Grant, you can speak. I mean, you've already spoken to how engagement is happening in the ISM. So, and I think that's what maybe more the question is about, is how engagement is happening with the seniors housing unit and the Seniors Housing Corporation. I mean, the refresh is something that TCHC implemented following quite extensive consultations and discussions at multiple board committees and board meetings and consultation over quite a long period of time with tenants. So, you know, other than having an understanding of some more information about what they're looking for, I'm not sure what else to say on that front, unless Grant has anything to add on how the engagement system is being incorporated into the seniors housing unit.
So, yeah, no, thanks, Lindsay. So I'll just add, and I think I tried to address some of this in the earlier question. Mm-hmm. Not all of, so from the perspective of the future corporation, the new corporation will ultimately have an opportunity to look at the engagement system as a whole. In the interim between now and the transition of the seniors housing unit, which will remain part of TCHC until it transitions to the new corporation in mid-2022, we'll be looking to get input and to adjust where we can the tenant engagement system in the context of what has been endorsed and agreed to with TCHC as a policy and at that board, because we will still be under the jurisdiction of TCHC until that transition takes effect. So, so for example, and you know, just as an example, there has been a separate conversation at the request of some of our senior tenant advisory committee members to talk about the tenant engagement system and what the refresh means. And we've started some conversations with the team that does the refresh within TCHC and supports our tenants about areas we can look to improve and address it from a seniors lens. And I think those are conversations that will continue. So that's one avenue. But I think it's a bigger conversation ultimately that comes to the future with the corporation as well. And so I think I'll stop there.
Oh, great, thanks so much, Grant. So our next question, and I don't know if we can provide a lot of information on this call because it's not entirely connected, but and the individual rights. I'm not sure if this is a related topic, but when are they going to launch the My Access to Housing TO portal? I don't know if anyone on the call has information about that. No.
I don't know the date. I don't know if there's a projected date yet. Yeah.
Great, thanks, Lindsay. So if that individual wants to follow up with us after, we can maybe connect them to the right group at the city who would be able to answer that question. So again, I'll ask if participants have questions and they haven't had an opportunity to ask them yet, to please enter them into that Q&A box through the WebEx program. And if they are joining us over the phone, they can hit *3 to put their virtual hand up. So I do see one individual with their hand up, and their first name starts with A. So I will unmute them right now, and then they can go ahead and ask their question. So please go ahead.
Oh, hi, this is Angela. Okay, I joined, but for some reason I couldn't get into the chat box. So I'm only hearing all the discussions, and I couldn't get any of my questions in the chat box. So basically, I saw the phase 1, phase 2. First of all, is this presentation available on the city website?
We will be posting it to our Tenants First website when we update the site. Yes.
That's number one. Number two. Yes, number two. Seniors. Will seniors get a first priority when we get into phase 2? Like, I'm just trying to understand some of this. When you start the seniors separate buildings, is it going to be separate buildings that seniors will be moved to, or they will stay where they are, or if they're in family buildings already? That's what I'm trying to understand, the logistics here. I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, that's a great question, Angela. So I'll let Jen answer that initially, and then if anyone wants to add anything, they can go ahead.
Sure. Thanks, Emily, and thanks, Angela. So the 14,000 units that we're talking about are already seniors designated. So they are seniors buildings. So the transfer of operations to Toronto Seniors Housing Corporation is related to those buildings that are already mandated for seniors.
And Jen, if a senior in a family building that's not designated for seniors wanted to move into one of the seniors buildings, they would apply for a transfer through access to housing. Is that correct?
Yes, and that is currently the process now. So if you're in a family building and you want to transfer into a seniors building, unless there are specific, safety or other concerns, that you would go through access to housing. So that will continue.
And maybe what I'll just add is the phasing that Jen was referring to in the presentation is really the phases of work for us to create that seniors housing corporation. So I'm not seeing any other questions at the moment. Again, if you're joining us over the phone, you can hit *3 to raise your virtual hand. And if you are joining us online, you can enter your question into that Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of your screen. Okay, so I have another participant with their hand up. So and their first name also starts with an A. So I will unmute you. Please go ahead with your question.
Peace be with you all. Hello, my name is Afifa, and
Hi, Afifa.
hi, Emily. I really appreciate you all doing this meeting, and I hope it to be very beneficial and helpful. I came sort of late to the meeting, almost half an hour, and I just wanted to know if I missed an information session or anything like that.
Okay, thanks so much, Afifa, for your question. So we have concluded the presentation, and we are now answering questions related to the presentation. So the presentation was focused on the staff report that will be considered by Executive Committee on Thursday related to the creation of a new seniors housing corporation. Jen, I don't know if you wanted to add anything to that.
Sure. If folks on the attending the session would like us to email you a copy of the presentation, you can email us at tenantsfirst@toronto.ca, and we'll send that out to you.
Great, thanks, Jen. So we have another question through the chat, and we may have answered this earlier on. So I'll put it to the panel, and if you feel that this has been answered, then let me know. But the question states, do you believe seniors and the youth program have been provided with a commensurate level of engagement?
I mean, I can't speak, I'm just letting you know, I can't speak to that. I don't know what the engagement system is. I'm not sure if a TCH staff wants to address that, or we can follow up and speak to the engagement specialists at TCHC and pull together some information.
Yeah, I'm not sure I'm the right person to answer that question, and I think we might need to understand more about what's being asked there. I can't answer that on its face. No.
It's Grant here. Thanks, Jen, Lindsay. The only thing I'll add, I don't think I can comment specifically on that question per se, although, and this has been part of that conversation I mentioned that happened with the Senior Tenant Advisory Committee. Some of the members who were interested in talking about the engagement system is that there is a recognized need to look at it from a senior's lens. So I will say that. And I think there was an intent in the way it was designed from the TCHC perspective that it would be something that could be applied across, their portfolio. But part of the going forward is to revisit that from the senior's lens. And I can't really comment on the youth program angle, but we can take that back. And there are plans to continue some of those conversations on engagement, for example, with our Senior Tenant Advisory Committee subgroup of members that are demonstrated interest in that particular area.
Great, thanks so much, Grant. The next question is more of a comment, and it states, many seniors are not comfortable with unknown youth coming into their buildings. So I wonder if maybe, Grant, you can speak to safety and security as it relates to the integrated service model?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Emily. So no, that's a fair point. And, different buildings have different needs as I think people can appreciate. So safety is an important aspect and part of what we want to be able to ensure for our tenants. So we'll be continuing to look at that. Part of the ISM is to look at safety from a policy and process lens, for example. So this is an area that will get some attention. And in the interim, if there are more immediate needs and situations, because some buildings have different situations and safety concerns, tenants can reach out, through the call line to get support from the community safety unit, for example, if there are more pressing needs. And we work with them from a sort of a safety planning perspective and looking at things that can be done in the buildings to address concerns.
Great, thanks, Grant. I just want to remind participants that we're looking to answer as many questions from as many participants as possible. So if you have already asked a number of questions, we may not get to all your questions in this forum, and you would have the opportunity to follow up with, we can connect you to the appropriate staff person after the meeting if there's a particular issue, because we really want to give as many people as possible the opportunity to ask questions and to get answers. Again, if folks do want to ask a question and they're joining us over the phone, they can hit *3, and participants can also type in a question into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of their WebEx program. So I'm not seeing any other questions at the moment, so we'll give participants a couple minutes to think if they have anything else. Okay, so I do see a hand up from a participant, so I will unmute them. Their first initial starts with an M, so I'm unmuting you now. Please go ahead with your question.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, my name's Margaret. I was just wondering if, because the seniors portfolio will be changed over, will they be able to participate in anything TCHC has? You know, like before we used to have tenants, tenants sort of an assembly type of thingy, where we get together and we discuss things. Will they be part of that? Or will they be able to be in any committees that are formed through the TCHC tenants?
Great, that's a great question. So thanks so much for that. I'll pass it over to Jen initially, and then if any other panelists want to jump in.
Sure. I'm not sure I totally understand what kind of things or bodies that you're talking about, but once there are two separate corporations, they will run separately. I know there are some programs that are joined. There are programs, seniors buildings that are close to other TCHC buildings, and they have joint programs, and we are hoping they will continue on and there'll be continued community engagement at that level. But in terms of like a formalized tenant engagement system, they will be two separate systems, and it will be up to the corporations to figure out if there's any interaction between the two. I'm not sure, Lindsay, do you have anything else to add?
No, that's exactly what I was going to say, Jen, for sure.
Great, thank you both. We have another individual with a hand up. Their initial starts with A, so I will unmute them now. Please go ahead with your question.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, I did ask before, I wasn't sure. I understand there's two of us there with the initial A. I am more interested also overall what the anti-racism policy is going to be. Is there one that's going to be separate? Is there going to be more inclusion for systemic racism as well as institutionalized racism, especially?
That's a good question. Again, I'll pass it over to Jen initially. Thanks so much to answer, and then other panelists can jump in as well.
Yep, thanks for that. I think as a city corporation, the Seniors Housing Corporation will be expected to, have some way of dealing with anti-Black racism and racism in general at an organizational level. And so again, it'll be up to that leadership, the board of directors and the senior leadership to figure out how that happens. But the city as shareholder will expect that that the corporation, I don't know if it's exactly what TCH has in terms of a confronting anti-Black racism strategy, but there will be, an expectation that the corporation will put some thought into that and have a way of dealing at a corporate level of issues of anti-Black racism and, systemic barriers.
Great, thanks so much, Jen. Did anyone want to add anything to that?
It's Grant, and maybe all I'll add is that at this stage, from the seniors lens, the seniors housing unit, which is part of TCHC and will eventually transition to the Seniors Housing Corporation next year, is fully embracing the TCHC confronting anti-Black racism strategy and working within that context right now in terms of supporting that. So I'll just add that that's not necessarily the direction ultimately. We can't, how am I going to say this? Like, the new corporation will set its direction, as Jen has said, but I just wanted to let people know that the seniors housing unit that's looking after the 83 buildings is embracing the confronting anti-Black racism strategy.
Great, thanks so much, Grant. We have another participant another participant who has their hand up, and their name starts with the initial B, so I will be unmuting you now. Please go ahead with your question.
Oh, hi, Emily. Hi, everybody. I'm constantly hearing, I guess they're kind of like your pat answers. There's a whole part that is taking place here on the ground with tenants, senior tenants, who have been totally left out of this entire conversation, aside from what you had mentioned earlier about some interviews and a few things like that. You compare that to what the youth have been involved with in terms of creating the engagement model for Toronto housing. They have been active, they have been supported, they have been funded, and what they have come up with is the model that is the refresh. There are seniors who have been arguing about the points of seniors being left out of that for 3 years. We have been snubbed. The director, the director of the refresh has not answered questions. We sit here and the seniors on the ground, the majority of them do not know what I know. They don't know anything about what's going on. They know nothing about the refresh. They know nothing about Tenants First. They only know that there's going to be a separation. There has been no communication that actually alerts seniors and involves them in this process. And that is totally contrary to how the youth have been engaged. So I think it's really important, that this is a part of the conversation. The ISM does not have an engagement model. You're saying it's separating in 2 years, and well, I guess we'll just make a new one then. Well, why isn't it being done right now?
Okay, well, thank you so much.
You're implementing the ISM right now. You should be implementing an engagement model that is specific to the needs of seniors, not putting in one during a transition. That is, okay. I'm sorry, folks, but I mean, that is absolutely ridiculous.
Okay, well, thank you for your
question
and comment. I don't know if any of our panelists want to speak to that feedback that we're hearing, or if there's anything to add. I think some of those comments had come up earlier on in today's session.
It's Grant. Maybe I'll just add, that I think I've tried to address it at some level in the earlier responses, and understood that there needs to be clarity with regards to how seniors will have a voice in engagement. And I think we're going to have to work on some plans about how to address that, and how that might evolve as we move into the corporation. I know there's a desire on the part of some tenants to have more information, and that's fair about the process. And we are working, for example, with the tenant engagement lead for TCHC about how to get more information out to tenants in a more effective way than maybe tenants have felt throughout the pandemic and over the last year. So I want to say that we're open to the conversation. The caller is accurate in that the tenant engagement refresh system is not a core element of the integrated service model, but effective communications with tenants is something that is. So we do see the value in it, and I think we need to be aware that it will take some time to work on this, and ultimately something that will probably come together more clearly with a new corporation.
Great, thanks so much, Grant. Our next question or comment comes through the online portal, and it's more of a comment. I think it's just stating that we should have anti-racism policies for all tenants, is how I'm interpreting that question or that comment. So I just thought I would pass that on. I don't know if there's if any of the panelists want to add anything around kind of the policies that we envision the Seniors Housing Corporation having, or the new Seniors Housing Corporation having, if there's anything to add.
I can jump in, Emily.
Sure.
So, I mean, certainly we acknowledge that many senior tenants face challenges, including poor health, mobility issues, social isolation, cognitive impairment, and those issues can intersect and exacerbate other vulnerabilities, such as racialized and gender-based poverty, structural and systemic racism, and unequal access to resources, services, and opportunities. So, you know, an adequately funded housing system with enhanced service delivery for seniors is absolutely critical to the city's efforts to serve seniors and to move ultimately from just an age-friendly city to an age-inclusive city to an age-equitable city. And our efforts need to be based on a comprehensive and inclusive understanding of aging, equity, and diversity, and aims to address the needs of seniors with consideration of their complex and intersecting needs. So, you know, we do need to focus on inclusive engagement and improved staff training and improved access to health and social services, and the development of policies that are specific to the needs of seniors to ensure that the needs of specific vulnerable groups are recognized and met. So I just wanted to just really echo that that comment, and it builds upon the comment that Jen made earlier about that it would be anticipated that the City of Toronto, as the sole shareholder, will expect that the new Seniors Housing Corp will have a confronting anti-Black racism plan of their own, specific to seniors and their needs.
Great, thanks so much, Andrea. I see a couple folks with their hands up, but I'm not sure if it's from earlier and the hand just didn't come down. So if your hand is still up and you don't intend it to be up, if you could please lower it. But if folks do have questions, they can put their hand up by hitting *3 on their phone, or they can ask a question through that Q&A box through WebEx. At the moment, I'm not seeing any additional questions. Oh, I think we have one more from a participant whose initials first name starts with M, so I will unmute you now. Please go ahead with your question. Hello?
Oh, I'm sorry. I think maybe my hand didn't come down.
Oh,
but
that's
anyway,
okay. Okay.
It's still Margaret. I have to thank you guys for bringing this to us. You know, we might not be getting enough information, but at least we're getting some. So I thank you for that.
Great. Thanks so much for that feedback and that comment, Margaret. We really appreciate it. And, you know, as more information becomes available, we do keep our Tenants First website up to date at www.toronto.ca/tenantsfirst. So any important updates, we would certainly post there. So I think that brings us to the end of our Q&A sessions. I'll turn it back over to Jen just to wrap up our information session this afternoon.
Thanks, Emily. And thanks again to everyone for attending the session and to all of our panelists for participating. We're back on our Tell Council What You Think slide. So I'm going to go through this information again. If you're on the phone and you want to write the information down, now would be a good time to grab a pen. Executive Committee is on April 29th, and that's the part of the city process where tenants and other members of the public can have their say at committee. Now that the meetings are virtual, you will be invited to join by WebEx, and you can participate that way. You can register to speak at emailing exc@toronto.ca or by calling 416-392-4666. You can also send an email or a letter which explains your feedback, concerns, ideas. And that can be sent to the same email address, exc@toronto.ca, or you can send it by mail on the 12th floor of West Tower City Hall, 100 Queen Street West, Toronto, Ontario, M as in Mary 5H to N2. City Council is on May 5th and 6th, and the item will be considered there as well, and you can watch live at the City Council YouTube channel. So thanks again for attending. I'm Jen St. Louis, and along with Emily Gauze in the Tenants First office, we want to thank you very much. Thank all our panelists. If you have any additional questions, please send us an email, tenantsfirst, TENANTSFIRST @toronto.ca, or give us a call at 416-338-3677. Thanks very much and have a great day.